Morning, everyone. I'm going to do a talk today on just very basic theosophy for people who don't know much about the Theosophical Society. As you can see today, I've got the dove of peace behind me, as we need peace in the world at the moment. So let's do a little meditation to start off with on peace. Just breathe out any tension, relax. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. Let there be peace, and let it begin with me. So what is theosophy? The word theosophy is derived from two Greek words, theo, divine, and sophia, wisdom. So its rough translation is divine wisdom, or wisdom of the gods, but not God as we in general do not accept an external God that lives on a cloud, or has human qualities, human failings. Our God or divinity is in everything. There's a Zen tale concerning a student who asked the master, "What is truth?" And the master replied, "Cow dung." What he was trying to convey was that divinity is present in everything, not just the things we regard as beautiful, although it is present to a greater degree in those things. And it's certainly easier to see it in them, but still it is in everything. Plotinus had a wonderful idea, but the more we attune ourselves to the beauty at the heart of all things, the more it takes us in hand and molds us in its image, so that we eventually become beauty and love. The statement by the master, the Zen master, that the truth was in cow dung was also designed to shock the student out of preconceived ideas. Because preconceived ideas need to be shattered to see the truth behind them. They're generally very much the product of the education system and the media. So we need to get to a state where we act spontaneously from our spiritual center. This is a kind of spiritual anarchy in which each man and woman lives in the light of their true divine nature. Everyone is different, but with the same inspiration, which makes for harmony and not discord, as logic would have us believe. But logic can be misleading. So theosophy agrees with this, and also the fact that the way to truth lies within and not externally. The word theosophy was not invented by the modern Theosophical Society, but is said to have been first used by the Neoplatonists in the early centuries AD. This school consisted of some fantastic scholars like Plotinus, Porphyry, Ammonius Saccas, Iamblichus. The school was eventually crushed externally, anyway, by the so-called Christians of the time and Bishop Cyril of Alexandria. The last of the school was a young girl, or young woman named Hypatia. She was a quiet, studious woman who was dragged out of a lecture hall by some Christians and bludgeoned to death, who were having her flesh scraped off with oyster shells and her bones crushed, so she could not take part in the so-called resurrection. Christian charity indeed. Mind you, I don't think the movement was really destroyed, but probably went underground. Many people and groups throughout the ages can be called strictly or roughly theosophical. Paracelsus used the word. The Rosicrucians have theosophical beliefs, so do the Masons. Comte de Saint-Germain was said to be a member of the same brotherhood who founded the Theosophical Society. And there's the Order of the Golden Dawn, anthropophagy, and other movements that have theosophical inspiration. So now some points concerning HP Blavatsky's life. The modern movement then was founded by a woman called Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. She was born in Russia, or more accurately the Ukraine, in 1831 to an aristocratic family, and from an early age had psychic powers. These were largely uncontrolled as a child, but eventually she did learn to control them. Also, she was obviously marked out for the task ahead, as on many occasions she received help from her master. Once when she fell from her horse, it was recorded that a hand was seen to catch her. Incidentally, an example of her nonconformist nature was shown by the fact that she refused to ride side saddle, as women had to do in those days. Doesn't seem like anything now, but it was a major thing in those days. She was also an accomplished concert pianist and actually toured with Clara Schumann, the wife of Robert Schumann. Clara Schumann herself was an accomplished composer too. So she had many talents. Another example of her nonconformist attitude was that when she was 15, a governess said that she was so awkward that no one would ever marry her, not even the old man, Colonel Blavatsky, old enough to be her grandfather. So just to prove the governess wrong, she got the old man to propose, and they were married. But she soon realized her mistake and ran away to travel the world in search of occult knowledge. She had many adventures, good and bad, with Native Americans, shamans, voodoo priests, yogis, fakirs, wise men and women, which are documented in the books on her life. She also spent a total of 7 years in Tibet, studying under the masters, who were to become her guides and co-workers for the rest of her life. Eventually, on the 17th of November, 1875, the Theosophical Society was founded in New York by HP Blavatsky, W.Q. Judge, Colonel Olcott, and others. It had a rough ride in the early days, mainly from the Christian missionaries, in particular, who tried to fabricate tales concerning H.P. Blavatsky's immortality. Immortality is a good word. Immorality and faking letters from the masters, etc. The Society for Psychical Research was sent in and did a very shabby investigation, which decided that H.P. Blavatsky had faked some things. But recently, they refuted the evidence and proved her right in many ways. The reason that the Christians hated her so much is that she slated the Christian church. She called it churchianity and its hypocrisy, and denounced the priesthood, trying to show us that we are our own saviors and we don't need intermediaries. This, of course, didn't go down well, as it still doesn't. The thing was that H.P. Blavatsky told people what she thought to their faces. And none of us like that, if we are honest. We all prefer pleasant lies to unpleasant truths. We're all children of our age, no matter how much we try not to be. But of course, once we start on the spiritual path, we try to overcome this and face the truth. H.P. Blavatsky produced many articles and books, including The Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, The Voice of the Silence, Key to Theosophy, under the guidance and inspiration of the Theosophical masters known to the profane as K.H., Kutumi, and M. Moria, though they had different names to their colleagues. She died on the 8th of May, 1891, in London. So now we'll look at some basic theosophical teachings. If I can get this up, hopefully. It's better. And this is the symbol of the Theosophical Society. You can see that at the top we have the symbol for Om, the sacred Om. It's said to be the first sound that emitted in the manifestation of the universe. And beneath that we have the swastika. It's been slightly modified because a lot of people find the swastika offensive, even though it is actually a very ancient spiritual symbol, spiritual energy and life. It's a very wonderful spiritual symbol, as I said, and it's used by the Buddhists, Hindus, Jainism, other religions, and has been used for thousands of years. It was just desecrated by the Nazis, of course, who turned it in the opposite direction. But we should remember that its true meaning. Then we have the interlaced triangles. We have a downward pointing triangle representing descent into matter, and the upward pointing one, the ascent into spirituality, spiritual path. Center the Egyptian Tau, which is a symbol of life, eternal life. And round about we have the Theosophical motto: there is no religion higher than truth. There's no religion higher than truth. So that is the symbol adopted by the modern Theosophical Society, the modern Theosophical movement. So reincarnation and karma are accepted by most theosophists, though nothing is put forward as dogma. We have many members who keep an open mind or don't accept these ideas at all. There is no dogma as said in the Theosophical Society, or there shouldn't be. And so we have Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, Muslims, pagans, agnostics. As long as these people are willing to accept the brotherhood of all living things and the fact that the inner truth of all religions is the same, they are accepted. Only bigots and religious fanatics may be frowned upon. Personally, reincarnation seems to be totally logical. I accepted it from being a child and before I had heard of theosophy in this life. I think the reason that the majority of people in the West don't accept reincarnation is due to the fact that we have lost contact with nature. Everything in nature is cyclic. The seasons, day and night, waking and sleeping, maybe even life and death. We are as much a product of nature as a tree or a flower or a bird or an animal. So it seems logical that we too follow the cyclic law and come back again in another body. It may seem illogical that we don't, but the world is so engrossed in materiality and money-making that it thinks itself separate from nature and invents its own fantasy rules for living. Acts as though it's going to be in this body forever, but it's only a few decades before we pass on. People shut their minds off to the fact that this life is so transient, and act as though they want to, they set up the house, the home, the family, etc., thinking these are going to last forever. We may have had hundreds of families in the past that have come and gone, and may have others in the future. Karma is generally designated as a law of cause and effect. Nature, inner and outer, is harmonious. The center of the universe is harmony. Imagine it to be like a still lake. If we disturb the harmony of this lake by throwing a stone into the water, then we create ripples. Harmony, calmness is only restored by the ripples reconverging on the point of disturbance. In the universal astral ocean, any ripples caused by us individually or collectively against this harmony will result in a reaction against us as the harmony of the universe attempts to restore itself. Again, this shows that the teachings of Theosophy are not invented, but are scientific in the true sense of the word. Truths have to be tested by personal experience and nothing should be accepted on blind faith. Logic, which is often misleads us, but true logic shows that we are all interrelated. There's not just an individual karma, but the karma of our family, town, country, planet, solar system, and universe that we are all caught up in. So let's look at something else. So Theosophy has detailed teachings regarding the after-death states given by the masters. He said that when we die, we first shed our physical bodies, and then we spend some time on the astral plane, shedding our astral body before we pass on to Devachan. So we have two deaths, really. And this is the land of the gods, which is a heaven world of our own creating. It is a perfect world, but somewhat of a fool's paradise, as we can have whatever we want there. For example, an Orthodox Christian would actually live in the kind of heaven he or she believed in, because it is all mind created. But there's no suffering there, there's no pain, there's no misery, there's no boredom, there's no depression. It's just a very beautiful state of being. This would go on for some time. It's said to be an average of 1,500 years. Well, that is an average. In some cases, it could be 15 years or even months, maybe 15,000 years in some cases, we don't know. Eventually, this stay in Devachan is exhausted, and karma brings us back to Earth to learn more lessons until we have lost our desire for life on this plane. And then we will move on to other spheres of activity and perhaps other planets maybe. Whilst this process is going on, the astral form continues to rot on the astral plane. And it is this that can be contacted by most mediums, or the lower mediums. We have higher mediums. Depends on the moral state and the spiritual state of the medium. If they're on a high level, they may contact higher beings, but generally, mediums would contact these rotting astral shells. And they consider this to be the spirit of the deceased. This is why the average mediumistic message is trite, like don't forget to put the cat out tonight, or some such things. And these astral forms can also be inhabited by elementals and other beings. Even black magicians can take control of them. So it's a very dangerous thing to get in contact with these lower entities. Well, this is the general rule. There are exceptions. Suicides and victims of violent death are earthbound until their natural life course would have been in past. For example, if someone was destined to die at the age of 70 and they have a violent death at 30, they will remain earthbound for 40 years before moving on. It may be that someone is held to earth by some strong desire for much longer, even centuries, and therefore cannot move on until this desire is resolved. This may be one explanation for ghosts. Also, beings involved in evil practices also function on the astral and can influence others, as said. They also may become vampires, whether psychic or otherwise. After centuries, these particular beings who have lost touch with their spiritual selves enter the mysterious eighth sphere and are heard of no more. This is a very deep teaching, but it's 99.99% of people would not reach that state. Even people like Hitler would not be that evil. It has to be someone who's really, really a dark soul. So Theosophy teaches the difference between the individuality and the personality. The ancient Greeks also knew this, as the word personality is derived from the word persona, which means a mask. So they knew it was masking something. The individuality is the real man or woman that does not change from life to life, and even in between lives. As Shakespeare puts it, we are like actors on a stage. The parts we play are our personality, and the actor is our true self, which is always the same when we leave the stage. It's also known as the Sutratma, or thread soul, because it runs like a golden thread through all our lives, which are like pearls strung along that thread. The individuality is the I-ness that makes us think we are who we are and no one else. But even this is an illusion that will pass in time when we are merged into the one life force that permeates the universe. Until then, we have this unbroken stream of consciousness that is the I, that does not change and can be easily experienced through meditation and deep thought. As we grow older, we can feel that there's a part of us that does not change, despite the aging of our physical self. This is the real self. It is the symbolic meaning of drinking from the fount of eternal youth. The Secret Doctrine is generally regarded as the main theosophical book for study. It's a very difficult book to get into, but the whole book is based upon three fundamental propositions. The first is an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could be only dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. In the words of the Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. This is the teaching in all true religions of the world, of a reality beyond thought or speculation, something that has to be experienced to become real. It cannot be thought of or expressed. The Tao Te Ching, a book of Chinese philosophy by Lao Tzu, says that the Tao that can be expressed is not the real Tao. The Tao that can be expressed is the mother of all things, which means its manifestations. We can have a glimpse of relative truth through nature, but the ultimate reality is beyond all thought. The second proposition is the eternity of the universe in toto as a boundless plane, periodically the playground of numberless universes incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars and the sparks of eternity. The eternity of the pilgrim is like a wink of the eye of self-existence. The appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. And this is to do with what I mentioned earlier, the cycles of life. It also says that our whole string of lives is just like a wink of the eye in the scale of things. So that gives us plenty to think about. Even the universe is really just a blink of the eye at another level. Think around this. It's very difficult to get the mind around eternity and infinity. If we think about it, we always end up reaching a limit to our perimeter of thought. I suppose as we advance, that limit may be stretched and stretched. So we may discover things that we can't possibly know with this limited mind, this lower mind. So the third one is the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root and the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul, a spark of the former, through the cycle of incarnation or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. In other words, no purely spiritual buddhi or divine soul can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle, or the oversoul, as A passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of the Manvantara. The Manvantara is a period of time, a very long period of time, and B acquired individuality, first by natural impulse, and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts, checked by its karma, thus ascending through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral and plant up to the holiest archangel, the Jnani Chowan, call them. The pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit through a long series of metempsychosis and reincarnations. So this gives the esoteric teaching found in many places in Eastern and Western teaching that consciousness requires a more refined vehicle for experience and expression. Theosophy teaches that there is no dead matter, that everything is alive to a greater or lesser degree and extent. Consciousness starts off in the elemental and mineral kingdoms, which have very limited awareness, but they are aware. I mean, for example, minerals evolve from the very basic to diamonds and crystals, which are the highest level. So when more expression is needed, this consciousness moves into the plant kingdom until still more expression is required. And then it goes into the animal kingdom, through all the grades of animal, and then into the human, where self-consciousness is finally reached. Up to then, it's been by natural impulse. This is why it is called, the human state is called the Pivotal Doctrine. Because this stage of humanity is when this self-consciousness is developed. And then we can proceed by self-induced and self-devised methods. From the human, we move on to other states of angelic being. But the ultimate end is to return from whence we came, plus self-consciousness. I find that as a human being inhabiting this body, I have this longing or urge to express myself all the time, and I get frustrated if I can't. Well, this desire to express ourselves is the guiding light, which is the true meaning of the word eros, which in its highest sense is a longing to create something that is beautiful. The theosophical definition of meditation is the inexpressible yearning of the inner man or woman to go out towards the infinite. We all have this longing. People try to fill this longing with material goods and emotional relationships, etc. But the true longing is for the spiritual. It's to awaken to our spiritual nature, to return from whence we came. And the more we progress on the path, the more we realize this. I mean, the more we try to kind of develop this longing for something that's permanent, not impermanent, not transient. Theosophy accepts other lives, such as angels and fairies, but believes that man and woman can develop themselves to a vastly superior state of consciousness. So no reliance is put upon such matters. Theosophy also teaches that we live on 7 states of being simultaneously. We have 7 bodies that correspond to the 7 colors of the rainbow, or the 7 basic musical notes. 7 is the magic number. You have a physical body, an astral, a desire body, a lower mind, a higher mind, an intuitive body, and a spirit. This is a very basic summary, but I have got a little bit more detailed thing to show. Fortunately, my image over here somewhere. Right. So we have this is sources from the Key to Theosophy by HP Blavatsky. And we have the first is the Stula Sharira. This is the physical body. It's a vehicle of all the other principles during life. Second is a Linga Sharira, which we call the astral body, subtle unseen double of the physical body. Third is prana, life, energy, vitality, that is in every one of them, of the lower ones. Permeates everyone. The fourth is karma. This is why I pronounce it karma, Karma, because you get mixed up with karma, which is desires and passions, the animal soul, as we call it. Then we have the lower personal mind, present personality, the lower ego, which has to deal with ordinary things like what we're going to have for lunch, and what we're going to pay the rent, and all these different things, and it's everything to do with living in the world. We have the antiskarana, which is like a link between the higher and lower manas or mind, and this is also known as the rainbow bridge in Norse mythology. We have the manas then, which is the higher human soul, the permanent reincarnation, individuality, the higher ego. Sixth is buddhi, the spiritual soul, the vehicle of pure universal spirit, and atma, spirit, the higher self, absolute universal divine principle. And atma buddhi is known as the monad. And the upper triad, which is atma buddhi manas, is immortal and enduring. The lower quaternary, sthula sharira, linga sharira, prana, and karma, is new with each successive incarnation. Constantly changes, but the atma buddhi manas, as I mentioned earlier, is the individuality upon which all these lives are strung like pearls. So those are 7 principles, 7 human principles, but also 7 universal principles, which I won't go into in this talk. But there you can see it's a very interesting teaching. Right. The society also has 3 objects. One is to form a nucleus of a universal brother-sisterhood of humanity, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour. Originally, it was to form a universal brotherhood of humanity, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour. But a lot of people didn't like the idea. They wanted it to be a nucleus, which is a bit more divisive in a way, I suppose. And the second is to study comparative religion, philosophy, and science. Third, to study the unexplained spiritual powers latent in man. The first, the universal brotherhood, is based upon the fact that we are all one in spirit. It has nothing to do with a political or social brotherhood, as Theosophy never gets involved with politics. Individuals can, but the Theosophy itself doesn't. It is concerned with the soul and placing oneself under the guidance of the higher self. And politics is concerned with material goals and aims. It is about individuality and following one's own chosen path in life. If people could only see that organized religions are hindrances instead of helps, then barriers would dissolve and we would be able to live the reality. This oneness is the basis of all true theosophy. We are also encouraged to study the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science to help to prove this oneness. We try to show that behind all religions, there is one truth, though expressed in different ways as a result of culture and time. Obviously, the cultures of Ireland and Japan are completely different, and externally things will be explained differently, but inwardly all is one. All the great mystics get to this oneness, but when they come back to the normal consciousness, they have to express it in the language of their particular culture and religion. So things appear to be different on the surface. Also, we believe in research into the spiritual powers in man and woman, not so much the psychic or the lower psychic, which are just a deeper form of materialism, and are attached to the personal self, which is regarded as essential to gain experience, but ultimately transitory. And in the Voice of the Silence, it says, these teachings are for those ignorant of the dangers of the lower id. The lower id are the lower psychic powers. We have to develop the spiritual powers, because psychic powers can be developed by evil people, by black magicians, just as easily as by spiritual people. So we have to get to the spiritual powers, which can only be touched by people who are on a truly spiritual path. Anyone who subscribes to one of these three objects is welcome to join the society, as long as the results of their work are used to help humanity in some way or other, as this is the reason that the society was founded by the masters. Compassion, altruism. If one is not interested in this ideal, then there are other organizations and groups to join, or one can merely proceed by oneself. But we believe that there is strength in unity. So in conclusion, I must say that theosophy is nothing new. It is just a restatement of facts known to all cultures and climes throughout history. The unique thing about modern theosophy is that most of the teachings have been reserved for the chosen few, until some of the custodians of these teachings in the Himalayas decided, due to the deteriorating state of society at the time, that they would release a few to the general public. But even they, in the end, were not encouraged by the results of their efforts. Many of the facts given out in the early days of the society have subsequently been proven by science, or by teachings being discovered or released by their guardians. Many still remain unique to us, but the fact of the verification of some would lead us to believe logically that others are correct as well. There are, of course, many centres of occult learning in the world, including Europe and the West in general. The reason that there are more in the East is because Eastern civilizations are many thousands of years older than the Western. When we were living in caves, they had advanced civilizations and even used flying machines, which is said, activated by the power of the mind. A wonderful idea. Activated by the power of the mind. So it is not surprising that the East is rich in esoteric lore, even though it is on the decline at the moment. As we in the West are still in our infancy, there's a great opportunity for us all to take time by the forelock and help to spiritualize our country, so that it may be raised to the heights achieved by the East in the past. It's up to us all to do our very bit to bring about a golden age of light and love in this country. Obviously, the outer body of the teachings will be different here as a result of our culture, but the inner truth must always be the same, and that is that we are divine. We are never weak, miserable sinners, as the Christian church tries to make us think, but we are all creatures of light, children of the light, if you wish. Personally, I have less and less time for concepts and ideas. The whole thing is to live in the one reality, the one light, the original pure mind. We all have it in us, and we can access it easily if we wish. But we think we can't, so we erect conceptual barriers all the time. Once we dissolve all of these, we can come together as truly human beings. Everything that we do and think affects the whole universe instantaneously. There's no such thing as separateness. HP Blavatsky called separateness the great dire heresy in the Voice of the Silence. We must learn to love each other. As Jesus said, all that I ask of you is that you love others as I have loved you. We must learn to love our enemies. It's a crazy world, people are going about creating kind of disharmony, wars and conflicts. It all seems to be kind of insanity if we get to the point where we know that we're all one, that we all share one life, we all share one spirit, we're all one being in essence, one being wearing millions, billions of masks, just one being. As we progress spiritually, we become more and more aware, and this separateness disappears until in the end there's only oneness. We must remember this. And it's so sad that people don't realize this. It says in the voice of the silence, alas, alas, that all beings possess a liar, the one soul, and possessing a liar, it so little benefits them. Meaning that everyone has this divine self within, and yet because they don't realize it, it's not benefiting them. It's creating so much disharmony, so much pain, so much suffering. So we must all strive for peace and love and harmony. Those are the main things that we need in our lives. The Theosophical Society came about all those years ago to try and bring this idea of the universal brotherhood of humanity, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour, into the world, so that people will become aware of this oneness. And everyone, the Buddha, Jesus, Christian, and many other people have come to try and tell us this, but mainly the world hasn't listened. Only a few people have. But these people are needed to keep the light shining in the darkness. I know we're in the age of Kali, the age of darkness. That will pass in time. So what we have to do is we have to keep this light shining. We have to keep this light shining despite whatever happens around us in the world. We have to become like the center of the storm. The center of the storm, which is calmness and tranquility, and radiate this tranquility just like the sun behind me. Just radiate it outwards, radiate into the world. Send peaceful, loving thoughts out. If you send thoughts of anger and hatred to someone who is angry and full of hate, you only increase that anger and hatred. This is why the Buddha said, hatred does not cease by hatred. Hatred only ceases by love. This is the eternal law. And Jesus said, love your enemies, bless those that curse you, pray for those that despitefully use you, that you may be sons of your Father which is in heaven. And the Father in heaven is the higher self, the divine self. So let's not despair. Let's remember what Pythagoras said. Take heart, for the race of man is divine. These are things I use in most of my talks. These are these little sayings, but the little mantras. So let's go forth as spiritual beings, with light in our hearts, with love in our hearts, with peace in our hearts, with gentleness, tenderness, compassion, all the things the world needs. Let's be them. Let's become them for the good and benefit of all. Let's never, ever despair. Thank you. I'll repeat again. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Let's have peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. Thank you.